It started like any other afternoon in Crestwood. The streets were calm, and the sun was slowly sinking behind rows of neatly parked cars and corner shops. I had just wrapped up a client meeting for my security consulting job and was walking to my car when I noticed flashing lights pulling up beside me. "Sir, step away from the vehicle," a firm voice ordered. I froze. Two uniformed officers rushed toward me, and behind them, stepping out of a sleek unmarked car, was Captain Ross. I recognized him immediately. He wasn't just any precinct leader. He was a local celebrity cop, the kind who regularly posted dramatic body cam footage online and went viral for teaching bad guys a lesson. Only this time, I wasn't a bad guy. "Is there a problem?" I asked calmly. Captain Ross didn't answer right away. He looked directly into the nearby camera mounted to his patrol car's dash, adjusted his collar, and then turned to me with an exaggerated sigh. "Yep," he said. "You match the description of a man seen trying to break into a pharmacy. Mind explaining what you were doing 5 blocks from there?" I blinked. "I was in a meeting. Here's the address. I can give you my client's number." Ross ignored me, glancing sideways at one of his officers, who was now rummaging through my car without permission. Something wasn't right. I could feel it that I stepped forward instinctively. "You can't search my car without a warrant or my consent." Captain Ross smiled, not kindly. "You're acting real nervous for someone who says he's innocent." "I'm acting cautious," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Because this feels like a setup." That's when one of the officers held up a small paper bag from the passenger seat. "Found something." My heart dropped. Captain Ross strutted over like he'd just won the lottery. He snatched the bag, opened it, and pulled out a handful of prescription bottles, none of which were mine. "Looks like we found our guy," he said smugly, loud enough for the dashcam mic to pick up every word. I stared in disbelief. "Those aren't mine. I've never seen those before." Ross stepped into frame, tilting the bag toward the camera like he was filming an ad. "Folks, this is why we stay vigilant. One less threat on the streets." Then he turned back to me and added in a low voice, "You should have kept walking." That's when I understood, this wasn't about justice. It was content. He was using me for views, just another video to boost his channel, his reputation, his ego. But what he didn't know was who I actually was. That I kept my hands visible and steady, but inside, I was boiling. "You're making a mistake," I said calmly. Ross chuckled. "No mistake. You got caught. That's how this works." The officer began cuffing me, and I didn't resist. Not because I was afraid, but because I had to play this smart. Ross had no clue who he'd just decided to frame. As they walked me toward the squad car, I spoke again, this time more directly. "You ever heard of Agent Marshall from the Bureau?" Ross paused. He turned slightly, squinting at me like he was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. "I am Agent Marshall," I said quietly, locking eyes with him. "Department of Internal Investigations. I've been assigned to monitor corruption in smaller precincts. Yours made the list." Ross froze. Even his officers looked confused now, glancing at each other. I could tell they weren't in on whatever this was all Ross. I went on. "You just tampered with evidence, violated civil protocol, and broadcasted false claims on a government-registered citizen. All on camera." Ross's face lost its color. He reached for the camera on his chest, but it was too late. I nodded at it. "That footage? It's going straight to the Bureau." Ross's fingers hovered over the body cam, but he knew better than to turn it off now. Doing so would only make things worse. "Nice story," he muttered. "You got any proof, Agent?" Without saying a word, I tilted my head toward my wallet, which one of the officers had already placed on the hood of my car. "Open the ID slot." The younger officer picked it up, flipped it open, and went pale. Captain," Ross snatched it from his hands and stared. There it was, my bureau credentials, the seal, the clearance number, the embedded chip. I'm not just a field agent, I said quietly. I'm internal affairs. And right now, you're looking like Exhibit A. Ross's mouth opened, then closed again. His viral moment had turned into a career-ending disaster in less than 5 minutes. I turned to the officer who'd cuffed me. Uncuff me. You're not in trouble, but I suggest you stay out of what happens next. The cuffs came off. Ross was still frozen in place, gripping my ID like it might explode. You planted evidence. For views, I said. There are at least 3 federal violations on that body cam alone. He started stammering. It wasn't like that. We got a tip. We thought, no, you thought this would make a great video, I interrupted. You chose the wrong guy. Ross tried to recover, his voice cracking under the pressure. Look, maybe we can talk about this. Off the record. No need to blow this out of proportion. I gave him a hard stare. You tried to ruin an innocent man's life on camera, for internet points. You don't get to decide what's out of proportion anymore. He glanced at the other officers, who were now clearly uncomfortable. One of them slowly stepped back, almost like he didn't want to be associated with this train wreck anymore. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to hand over that dashcam footage. Every second of it. I already have authorization to seize departmental media if it involves suspected misconduct. Ross shook his head slightly, as if trying to reboot reality. You can't just walk in here and, I already have, Captain, I cut him off. And for the record, this sting operation. You just failed it. He staggered back a step, finally grasping the depth of what had just happened. His career wasn't just at risk, it was likely over. I pulled out my phone and made a quick call. This is Agent Marshall. Crestwood PD just confirmed. We've got all we need. There was a pause. Then the voice on the other end said, copy that. Dispatching internal recovery now. I looked at Ross one last time. They'll be here in 10 minutes. You might want to start thinking about your statement. Captain Ross stood in stunned silence, his carefully curated persona crumbling in front of the very audience he tried to impress. No camera trick, no edit, no caption could save him now. As I waited for the recovery team to arrive, the officers who had been with him began to step away, subtly distancing themselves, not just physically, but professionally. I could tell this wasn't their plan. Ross had gone rogue, blinded by ego and craving internet fame more than justice. One officer, a younger guy named Ochoa, walked up to me. Agent Marshall. I had no idea. I swear. He just told us to roll with it, said we'd be on a quick clip for community engagement. I nodded. You're not in trouble, Officer Ochoa. But write everything down while it's fresh. What he said, when he said it. It'll help your record. He nodded quickly and stepped back. Ross, meanwhile, sat down on the curb like all the air had left his body. Gone was the cocky confidence. Now he looked like a man realizing the weight of his actions was about to crash down on him. Moments later, 2 black SUVs pulled up. Bureau agents in suits stepped out, heading straight toward me. They didn't need instructions. One went for Ross. The other headed toward the patrol car's onboard system to pull the footage. Ross looked up at me, eyes hollow. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. People like those videos. They listen when there's drama. And now they'll listen to this, I said coldly. Ross didn't resist as the agents guided him to his feet. His hands trembled as they cuffed him, the same cuffs he had once so proudly slapped on others for show. But there were no cheers now. No dramatic music. No high-definition edit. Just reality. And consequences. One of the agents turned to me. We've secured the dashcam and bodycam footage. His files will be scrubbed from all non-official platforms before the hour's up. I nodded. Make sure everything he ever uploaded is reviewed. If he's framed even one other person for attention, we'll find it. Another officer stepped out of the precinct with a USB drive, handing it to the team. It held internal logs, private audio, and behind-the-scenes planning, the blueprint of Ross's ego-driven campaign. As the bureau vehicles prepared to leave, a small crowd had started to gather on the sidewalk. Some had recognized Ross. But instead of applause or praise, there were only stunned faces and quiet murmurs. No one cheered this time. I turned to Ochoa once more. This department has a chance to rebuild, cleaner, better. Make it count. He nodded, more determined now. As the SUVs pulled away, I stood for a moment in the fading light, watching the illusion of a so-called hero disappear into the justice system he'd once abused for clicks. One bad actor down. And many still to go. A week later, I sat in a quiet federal office reviewing footage and reports from Crestwood PD. Captain Ross had officially resigned, though resigned was generous. He was under federal indictment for evidence tampering, civil rights violations, and obstruction. What we didn't expect was what we uncovered in his files. He hadn't just staged that one arrest. There were dozens. Fake stops. Edited footage. Innocent people who'd been made to look guilty, some even pressured into staying quiet in exchange for dropped charges. And each video had been monetized and shared across multiple platforms, generating hundreds of thousands of views, and thousands in ad revenue. This is bigger than one precinct, one of my fellow agents said, scrolling through Ross's correspondence. He was coaching other departments, teaching them how to stage dramatic arrests for media attention. I leaned forward. That's a network. Exactly. And we're going to bring the whole thing down. I exhaled slowly. The takedown of Ross had been a win, but it was just the beginning. The truth was, he wasn't the only one turning justice into a performance. And now that the mask had slipped, we were going after every last one of them. Just when we thought we had wrapped up Ross's case, something unexpected came across my desk. A civilian emailed our office with the subject line, "I was one of Ross's clips, I can prove it." Attached was a raw, unedited video, clearly filmed on a cell phone from behind a tinted car window. It showed Captain Ross several months earlier pulling over a young man in a hoodie. There was no probable cause. Ross planted a vape pen in the cup holder, then turned to his own body cam and said, "Another one off the streets." But in the cell phone footage, it was crystal clear, the kid never had anything illegal. The moment Ross walked away, the bystander recording whispered, "He does this all the time." We traced the boy, his name was Malik Reynolds. 19. No priors. He'd taken a plea deal just to avoid jail. I called him in. He walked into the federal building nervous, clutching a manila folder. "I didn't fight it," he said quietly. "Who would believe me over him?" "You were right to come forward," I said. "You're not just helping yourself, you're helping us stop this system from protecting men like him." Malik opened the folder and slid over 5 printed screenshots. Each one showed different thumbnails from Ross's old channel. Malik was in 3 of them. He looked at me, eyes sharp now. "I want my name cleared. And I want him to answer for what he did to all of us." I nodded slowly. "You're going to get both. Because this wasn't just a story about one man's abuse of power. It was about how many let it happen, and how far we were willing to go to make it right. By the time Part 10 of Ross's downfall unfolded, the case had gone national. News outlets picked up the story, police captain exposed for faking arrests to go viral, FBI agent was his undoing. But behind the headlines was the real work, dozens of wrongfully accused people like Malik coming forward, some angry, some broken, all carrying the same quiet pain of being used. We reopened every arrest tied to Ross's videos. Some victims had lost jobs, homes, even custody of their kids. It was more than views, it was lives, wrecked by a man chasing internet glory. And then something surprising happened. Other officers began to speak out. First a sergeant from a neighboring town. Then a deputy in a different state. They admitted they'd been pressured to create content-friendly interactions. Not full-on framing, but staged warnings, exaggerated confrontations, drama that sold the image of authority. And Ross? He'd been the salesman. Hosting online webinars under fake names, teaching departments how to boost engagement through narrative policing. That term made me sick. I stared at the growing evidence wall in our office. Names. Videos. Bank transfers from monetized clips. This was no longer about one captain. It was a culture. But cultures can be dismantled, piece by piece. And we had just started pulling the threads. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. We uncovered a private forum, hidden behind layers of encryption, where dozens of law enforcement officers traded tips on performance arrests. It was filled with scripts, staged dialogue suggestions, even recommendations for which types of people looked the most suspicious on camera. Disgusting. And Ross? He was one of the admins. Under the alias, Justice Real 89. He'd built an entire community of enablers, all hiding behind badges and social media handles, more concerned with virality than the law. We secured warrants, froze accounts, and launched internal investigations across 5 states. My office was flooded with evidence, bodycam footage that had been edited before submission, deleted dashcam files recovered from backups, and whistleblower testimonies. But nothing hit harder than one specific discovery. In a cloud storage folder titled Scraps, we found a deleted clip, never published. It was of a young girl, maybe 14, being stopped while walking home from school. Ross was the one behind the camera. He questioned her aggressively, falsely claiming she fit a theft description. She cried the entire time. It was never released because, according to Ross's notes, too much crying, not enough action. That was the final straw. This wasn't just a breach of conduct. It was psychological warfare, for likes. I took that clip to the top. And within 24 hours, Ross was transferred from local holding to federal detention. No bail. No more cameras. Just silence. The courtroom was silent as Ross sat at the defense table, shackled, pale, and no longer performing for the lens. The trial moved quickly, too much evidence, too many witnesses, and not a single juror who could stomach what he'd done. Former officers testified. Victims cried. The jury saw clips that were once cheered online now shown in raw, unedited horror. When the verdict came down, guilty on all counts, he didn't even flinch. Maybe he was numb. Or maybe, for the first time, he understood what it meant to be on the other side of the story. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse. But I didn't stop for cameras. I wasn't there for headlines. I stepped into a separate room where Malik sat, quietly watching the news coverage on a wall-mounted TV. "He's done," I told him. Malik nodded slowly. "Took long enough." He stood, and for the first time since I met him, there was peace in his eyes. "You helped take down a network that thought it could rewrite truth for views," I said. "You weren't just a victim. You helped end it." He offered a tired smile. "Then maybe I can start over." And he would, along with dozens of others, finally free from the shadows cast by a man who thought justice was a performance. As I walked back into the city, I glanced up at a billboard that once showed Ross in uniform, smiling. It had been taken down. Replaced by a message that said, "Accountability isn't a trend. It's the law." And this time, no one was filming.